Hi, Andre.
Hi, Melinda.
I'm so excited to be here chatting with you today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's been a while since I've interviewed anyone, so I'm super excited.
Well,
And
been a while since I've been interviewed. So there you go.
so I can't wait for the world to get to know you and your book, Ripped in Two. It is amazing. And
And you're
yeah,
saying this because you read it.
yes.
She's had the privilege.
Actually read it. I'm not just making that up. I actually did read it. And it had me on the edge of my seat and just my imagination going crazy and just really captivated by your characters. So um, anyways, why don't we just get to it? So why don't you tell everyone what your book is about?
My quick pitch of the book is that it it is about two souls that it's a paranormal drama to begin with. So it's about two souls that have been like wandering the woods of Massachusetts. They've passed, so they find each other and they fall in love and they decide they want to live again. And so they have no connection to a higher power or God per se. And so what they decide to do is inhabit the body of two kids and to live inside of them without disturbing them their whole lives in the hopes that once they die, that they can just follow them to what would be heaven and there, request that they live again so they can love each other in the physical form. But the book follows through 25 years at these kids, start to have psychological breakdowns of because of having these entities inside of them. So that's really the whole psychology of it. It's what I wanted to explore when I wrote it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The psychology of things.
Yes.
It's really fascinating actually. It's like stuff that you I don't know, it's stuff that I don't normally think about. So I'm glad somebody else does.
Well, yeah, I at first when I like came up with the idea, which is kind of a whole, I mean, this has been brewing for so long in my
Right.
mind. Um, I kind of, well, if there's a soul inhabiting the body of another, immediately you think of, you know, something like The Exorcist or movies like that. And I definitely didn't want to go down that route. I didn't want to do
Right.
anything that was any way, shape, or form similar to it. I wanted to do something that would keep you on the edge of your seat, but it was really character based and kind of try to figure out, how can you live with something that's inside of you?
Yeah.
Another personality, can you find some kind of friendship or relationship that you can live with, or is it impossible? And in a way, I think for me, that mirrors, any close relationship, like a really deep friendship or a lover situation or a parent child situation, any really deep relationship that starts to kind of enter you and it starts to change you.
Yeah.
And I want it to be that kind of dynamic instead of something
Yeah.
or that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really relatable and yeah, so thank you. So tell us a little bit about the timing of your book and it coming out and the crazy world we're living in right now.
Well, I definitely back in, I think, 2012 when I first really had the idea for this and wrote the draft. I never in my mind imagined that 8 years later that the timing of the book would be when something like, well, the coronavirus happening, COVID-19 happening in the world. Who could have predicted? I mean, I certainly couldn't. And so, so for a bit of time there, I was wondering, well, do I release the book? Do I not release the book? And the work is done. I it's ready. So I thought, well, the timing of things does matter. I have always felt with anything I've written before or any play that I've been in as an actor or something like that, it always matters, you know. And I thought, well, let's, you know, to me, obviously, it's a very difficult time because
Yeah.
I also like my job. I've been laid off from it, and we're all uncertain of the times. And but as an artist, when I put the story together, I really wanted to, like I said, maintain the psychology of it, and so I explore issues of isolation, of loneliness, of not being able to relate to other people or people relate to
Yeah.
you, or being afraid to have friendships or, you know, lovers. And one of the characters really has a hard time finding someone who would love him. Um, and to me, what I wanted the audience to get out of it always has been, you know, coming from parts of it coming from experience or and also from research. Whenever someone is like losing grip of their um, mental health, right?
Yeah.
You know, it was really, it's, I couldn't really find something that wasn't self help. That was when I was dealing, you know, there was a time I was dealing with depression too. This was a few years ago. I think everyone at some point in their lives deals with it. I couldn't really find anything that wasn't like self help that would allow me to connect. And I usually connect better with something that's fiction. And so,
Yeah.
uh, I thought I wanted readers as they read it and go through the journey of these characters. Whenever they do it, if it's in a couple weeks or if it's, you know, a year from now, 10 years from now, I wanted
Yeah.
them to kind of see characters lose grip of themselves and fight really hard to regain grip of it and lose it, gain it back, and how they refocus their lives. And I thought, well, at this time, a lot of us are dealing with that, like being home and not being able to connect as we normally would. And, you know, so I thought, well, hopefully this is a good timing and that if
Yeah.
these stories of these characters can shed some light into how maintain grip of your mind, I think then
Yeah.
the
I think
timing is
it's
right.
perfect. I think actually the timing is perfect. And I know you're a really kind and generous soul. And so, like, you never
I
want
do
to take
my
it.
best.
You never want to take advantage of people or the situation. But I actually think that, like, the book coming out now, like you said, I actually think it could help people that need not a self-help book and not the mainstream media perspective, but like fiction and storytelling to help them process what is happening. And I know that for me, like, I actually read the book before I've gone through some personal things like anxiety and feeling stuck and my own, like, mental, I'm not mental, but you know, my own mental
Well, yeah, it's always strange to
things.
say mental health for some reason. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah, so I actually, like, kind of want to go back and reread it, but I definitely feel like the world is wrestling with this, like, weird, like, forces actually, you know, right now. And people are more open to self introspection right now than they were maybe like a month ago. So I think it's amazing how, like, the timing just aligned for this book to come out.
Yeah, you know, I've always been interested in any writing that I do. That, for lack of better, I don't know, analogy, the struggle between light and darkness to me has always been important, either externally or internally. And I think in this particular book, the struggle is more internal.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, these unforeseen circumstances that we're in, even if not this moment or today, but perhaps a week from now, a month from now, who knows how long this will go on for.
Yeah.
Hopefully will end sooner than later, but I still think that when we're kind of forced to be with ourselves kind of
Mhm.
most of the time or the whole time, which is happening to a lot of us around the world. I think we start to look at like light and darkness inside of us and the balance of that, and and then we try to kind of like tip it toward, I guess, the lighter portion of it. But sometimes in order to do that, you have to travel through the darkness that's inside of you. And so for me, I think, um, yeah, I definitely had um, a good time, is weird to say, but I had a good time exploring this within all of the characters that are in the book.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's great. And I think that I am really honored to be doing this with you right now because you and I have a long history of supporting each other through our artistic endeavors and being there for each other and bouncing ideas off each other. And somehow, by I don't know. I don't know. I've been a part of this process from the beginning, from you
Yeah.
like putting pen to paper, from you asking people to read it, to you editing it, to you getting feedback, and now like it's about to come out. It's like incredible. So I didn't know if you wanted to touch any more on just, I don't know, the artistic relationships.
A bit, yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, you've been one of the people who have been listening to me talk about this for like 8 years now, or whatever it's been. It's just like, so thank you for listening, because I'm sure the hours I've yapped, if they were all put together, would be days throughout these years. And so, yeah, I appreciate. But like, right, we've known each other for years, and I've always appreciated like how honest you are in your artistry, and how you go through life, like really trying to do what's right, and by yourself and by other people. And I think in a way you and I like, um, I don't know, attracted ourselves to each other artistically and as friends because we have the mutual interests, and we see things kind of similarly, right? Even though our backgrounds are totally different. I think New York, when we lived in New York, like brought us together, and we saw similarities. And
Yeah.
so, like, a couple of years ago, you did your one woman show at the Fringe Festival in Hollywood. And I helped you produce it, and I loved even the first draft of that, and I saw that show grow. And actually, your show's on YouTube right now, so
Yeah.
I'll put a link on
Woo!
here if people want to check it out. It's on YouTube, and it's free to watch, so you should watch it because it's great. Uh, a great spiritual journey, which always is like interesting to me. Whether
Well,
it
after you
touches
read
on,
it.
yeah, and it's spiritual to me, like whether it touches on religion or not, it's always like it's what
Yeah.
interests me in any
Yeah.
art
And
form. And so I thought, we've known each other for so long and our sensitivities, and I thought, who would I want the first person to interview me about it but you? Because you also have, we've been there throughout many different endeavors. Like even at your YouTube channel, you have a
yeah.
show um, where you interview people, and I said she's great at doing that, and so it just made sense that we're here.
Yeah, and I know the book isn't about me, and but when I read it, I actually felt like really connected to it, and I felt like I saw some of myself in the characters and in what they were going through. And but I actually don't remember. I'm sure you probably told me, but I actually don't remember like how did this novel come about. And yeah.
Well, it's, I had the idea for it in 20. Um, well, actually, I can tell you how it originally started.
Yeah.
Prologue of the book, which is actually, I posted the prologue of the book as a teaser. It's on my website. It's also on Facebook and on Instagram, but I'll put a link to that here as well. So we have
Yay.
tons of links. The prologue is actually what happened first, but I had no idea at the time that it would be um, a novel. It did literally the way it kind of started is that I did a movement for actors class,
Oh,
and an assignment on it was that we would choose a artwork, like a painting or photo, and
yeah.
that we needed to perform without speaking for about 5 minutes. And our last pose needed to be whatever that picture was. And so I did um, a 4-ish minute piece where a person woke up and was missing their husband, and was trying to take the ring off the finger, and then because of some other psychological things went off into like the grave, unearthed the husband and took the skull home and sat down. And then there is a French painting called Mary Magdalene. um,
Hmm.
Gosh, the name escapes me suddenly. It's in the book. This painting is actually, I shoved it into like the book. It's part of the story at some point.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, Mary Magdalene with the flame, I believe. I think I'm missing a word there, but oh well. My brain is not the same as it used to be years ago. But anyway, so I did that piece in class, and in that photo, she's sitting with a skull in her hand, and there's a candle lit, and it just looks very like heartbreaking. And I thought,
Hmm.
I was also taking a creative writing class at the time, and when an assignment happened, I thought, I wonder if I can take that movement piece and turn it into a story. So I did it. I turned it into a story, and then eventually, as I went a few years down the road, I had an idea for a novel, which was in 2012, and that prologue, that at the time short story, just I happened to have taken it out and it was sitting in my bedroom. And as I was sitting down plotting the idea for this book, I looked at that prologue and I went, "Oh my gosh, what I'm plotting is should start here." And I
Wow.
took that short story and turned it into a prologue for this novel, and then from that point on, everything
The rest is history.
happened. Yeah. And then in the afterword, I explained two major things that inspired me to put the story together, an external thing and an internal thing that happened in my life. But I'll leave that for people to be surprised about, because I think it makes more sense to really know that once you've read the tale at the end, you figure out how I put those two things together. But I think the very first thing was in 2000 and no, it was in 1996, and the other happened in 2006. So it was like those
Oh,
two
wow.
external things were 10 years apart. And
Wow.
then into 2012, 6 years later, I put those two things together, wrote this novel, the first draft, and now, 8 years later, here we are.
Wow. I'm always inspired by you about how you are so good about listening to I read a book and the name escapes me too, but where they call it,
Hope for life. Names escape us. That's
he calls it the artist muse. And I feel like whatever your artist muse is, I feel like you're really good about listening to it, slowing down when you need to, and like putting all those pieces together. I don't know, I feel like you're one of my few artistic friends that actually in this day and age slows down long enough and meditates or ponders whatever that artistic muse is and that voice speaking to you and like putting that together.
well,
And
I definitely feel like um, as an artist, I think part of their job is to kind of pull from life, right?
yeah,
And you don't. A lot of times I make notes, like when I travel, especially, but even in my daily life, it's not diary entries. It's more like notes of things I saw or things I experienced, just so I remember. Sometimes it's a couple of sentences long, but I uh, I remember what they were.
yeah,
And sometimes it's interesting to see in life things that kind of you wouldn't think normally would go together, but experiences that actually mirror
Yeah.
each other in some way. And,
Mm.
and I think sometimes you have to pull from yourself. And so when you do pull from different things and shove them together, I think uh, you can have an art piece that is more well-rounded because it's being pulled from various things as opposed to like maybe one thing, which can be
Yeah.
just powerful. But for me, I think it helps me when I have more than one channel coming through. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you can definitely see that in the book. And another way that you have listened to that artistic voice is well, I have the original book. Oh, sorry. I have the original book here. But and he signed it. I have an autographed
It
copy.
has like an
But
early draft that I printed. She read it and I was like,
but you actually ended up changing the name of the novel.
yeah.
And why did you do that?
Well, I thought, and I was just really, I was struggling with the idea that I had been a playwright for so long, and I had been a poet when I was younger, and I wrote some music too when I was younger. And so when someone was telling me, oh, if you're going to be a novelist, you definitely don't want to tell somebody you are also an actor or that you're a playwright or whatever, it's confusing. And I was like, really? I think those times of confusion have passed when it comes. I think, you know, there's a generation out there that is now really being like told to do everything as much as they can, and as post here, do that, be your own content creator. And I was thinking of a larger, I was actually writing this book, and then I thought, well, it's trying to pull a character and create a character, and then just occurred to me, I said, wait, why am I trying to create a certain character that fits a certain mold when I've already created that character in another piece that
Yeah.
I've written before? What if I just pull that character into here? And then when I did that, I thought, well, I just started to do it more and more in my mind. And originally, I had written this to be a series of books, and so I thought, great, what I'm going to do is create a larger universe that I've now named Torn Skin, where I pull everything I've ever written, put together, and characters and so on, and am going to intertwine them in all of the stories and novels to come. And so, um, so with that said, Elijah was a character that I had written about in a different piece, and he's one of the main characters in this book. It's Dana and Elijah. So I had looked up what the names Dana and Elijah meant, and they meant something to me as well. And so I thought, oh, it's great. I'm going to name it Dana and Elijah. But as I wrote the novel, I thought, you have to, fit into the universe you created, which is Torn Skin. And I had the idea to have every single book um, having to something to do with like being pulled apart or ripped or
Yeah.
torn in some way. And one of the characters in this book is called Two, literally the number two. And I thought, okay, this book is constantly about the struggle between two people. It's either between the main characters, Dana and Elijah,
Yeah.
either between the characters 1 and 2, or the doctor and and other people. So it just keeps going. It's like, to me, it's even numerology wise, the number of this book is 2. If that makes sense to you, if you're a numerologist person, that's like the energy of the book to me. And so I thought, okay, Dana and Elijah, which was the original title, doesn't really tell much about what the story is. It doesn't really give a feeling. It could be a romance. It could
Right.
be anything when you see
Yeah.
Dana and Elijah written. And the idea to me, the main visual that I had is actually what's in the cover of the book, which is that woman being over the grave looking at that skull that's been unearthed.
Yeah.
And
It's exactly how I pictured it in my mind when I read it the first time. So,
yeah, and so
whoa.
it's literally being ripped in two, right? And also the RIP on the tombstone is also been cut in half. And so I thought, well, it just made sense to me to change the title to something that I think mentioned more what the story, like informed more what the feeling. And so when you see Ripped in Two, you definitely get an immediate sense of
Yeah.
the feeling behind the tale. And so so
Oh
I
gosh,
changed.
don't we all feel ripped in two lately?
Yeah. And so, like I said to you, it's a struggle between like an outside and something that's inside of you. And it's constant like that in the book. It constantly happens.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it makes
Makes
total
sense.
sense. Yeah.
And you just mentioned the character of the doctor, and
Mhm.
he's actually a psychologist.
Yeah.
And you wrote this book, most of it, maybe all of it, before you had or felt like you needed to start meeting with one. So,
Yeah.
how did that, when you went back to reread it and re edit it, how did that impact your process?
It's interesting. When I was in high school, something that I thought about being as far as a profession was a psychologist. I really,
I
really,
didn't know that.
yeah, I really considered it, and I took like AP psychology. I took regular. We had psychology in our high school, and I took that, and I took AP psychology. So I took 2 years of it.
Wow.
And it was really exciting to me. But then how that ended up translating to me is that that's when I had really started to write a lot and create
Yeah.
characters. And I was also an acting, I was acting already. I was an actor. And I noticed how much psychology was helping me dive into characters and figure out their brain. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's why so and so did this in The Tempest, William Shakespeare, The Tempest. Oh, I can see why Romeo and Juliet like went through what they went because now I kind of had more information about how the brain worked. And
Yeah.
so for me, that was always really interesting to start in the psychology of things. And so I did not become a psychologist, and I did not feel the need to go through therapy until 2018. That's when I was like, you know what? I need to rearrange some things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like the culture where I came from or I have no idea. But there was this definite like um, I think it was just my personality, how it used to be. I thought I can do it on my own. And so I just always was like, oh, if something is off, something feels wrong, I'll just fix it myself. And so I kind of went through a lot of my life thinking that way.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was like, it's silly. I have high respect for psychology. I've written many pieces that I feel are psychology related, yet I have not been through therapy myself, even though I've read a lot about it, studied a lot about it, and I have a couple of friends who are psychologists.
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought, I'm going to do it. And it was life changing for me. And I'm so glad because I literally had to go back and change some things in this novel in the final draft of it because I went through it myself. And so
Hmm.
through therapy, I mean.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to mention, I do have a friend, which I won't mention the name of because we a lot of what we discussed is confidential. But when I was writing the first draft, I wanted to see if how psychologists dealt with paranormal things in their
Yeah.
session.
Yeah.
And so I asked around, and there was a specific friend that I went and I asked him, do you know anything about this? And he actually told me, actually, I have had a few cases where paranormal things were discussed. And, it was interesting for me to hear, that person didn't tell me anyone's name because obviously he has an oath not to discuss
Yeah.
it. But he said, patient A, patient B, and,
Yeah.
and never told me the gender. He just always was like them, always said them. And so he kind of talked to me about how certain things would happen in sessions and people would say things, and you as a professional have to figure out how you're going to take that and help them because you have to
Whoa.
go by facts, right?
Right.
So Oh, I
Yes.
lost you for a second.
Oh no, I'm here.
So I kind of I listened to him a lot and how he dealt with it and how you should deal with it or what, the book tells you to do, but then you go case by case. It's very interesting. And
Wow.
then, I also, I loved this HBO show called In Treatment that deals with the mindset of a psychologist and how he has to deal with it. It's amazing if you haven't seen it. It's 3 seasons long. It's an older show, like 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it. And so I thought, psychologists are people too, and it's a very interesting profession to have to sit there and not talk about yourself at all, and
Yeah.
literally not about you at all, and it's about someone else discussing something. And you do that 9 to 5, like you really don't divulge anything about yourself. And um, it requires a very special person, I think, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But regardless, it takes a toll on your mind. I would imagine. I'm not a psychologist, but I always imagined, and as I wrote this book, I imagined that it would take a toll on someone's mind. Not everyone, but on some people.
Yeah.
You have to listen to certain issues all day. Sometimes issues are repetitive from person to person, and then
And then you can't talk about
yeah,
it.
and then it's like, am I making a difference? Am I not making a difference? All those things that we feel in our jobs, right? Like in
Right.
our lives. Am I making a difference? Like, are they? Because then, like, the problems never stop, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
the next patient, the next patient. So I thought it was an interesting um, mind to explore. And Dr. Stevenson, which is the character in this book, um, actually will become um, is a very important character, and in the course of the Torn Skin universe, like in
Yeah.
different novels, he will actually be very prominent as well. And so I really enjoyed writing him specifically in the book. I think he brings a sense of reality and groundness that I really
Yeah,
love.
he does. And like I feel like in general, psychologists in movies or things, they're really only there to help you get a sense of the plot or what the main characters are going through, and then they're gone, right? And
Yeah,
they've served their purpose for the script. But in your book, he really is like, he is a character and he has a journey too. And I think, I don't know, I found that really captivating, and I can't wait to read like the other books.
yeah. Well, I mean, of course, I've been working on the other books too. There's another one coming out in October, and then one coming out hopefully in April of next year. And so, but as far as,
Yes.
Dr. Stevenson, he comes in at the very end of chapter 5 in the book, and then he kind of, in my mind, like takes over the tale. And so,
Yeah.
and because naturally he has to, it's up to him to make a lot of things happen or not happen. And so, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I really, he diagnoses the teenagers at the time with
Don't
certain,
give it away.
I know, certain mental disorders. And
Yeah.
and it's difficult. Yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but it's difficult, I think, to be that person who sits in the chair and says, I think this person has this issue, that issue. Am I right or am I wrong? How long will they have the issue for? When are they now okay? When do we need to end sessions? Like, it's kind of, are they okay to be on their own now? And so it's kind of like it's a
Hmm.
big it's a big thing to do. And I can just imagine someone doing that constantly all day, every single day of their job.
Yeah, I can't
An
either.
amazing, really much needed all over the world profession. If you haven't done therapy and if you feel like you really should, because it really, when you take it seriously and you work on what you need to work on every single week, it just connects the dots, is what I think. Sometimes we collect a lot of dots as we go through life, and some
Yeah.
therapy if you've collected so many dots that you can't see the correlation between them, therapy just kind of like organizes the dots for you so that you
Yeah.
see, oh, these dots go here, or these goes over here. Let me take care of these first so that you know you compartmentalize, I think
Yeah.
is what it helps you to do.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, I've been meeting with a counselor for like the last 4 weeks, and it's the same. Yeah, I totally agree. It's
Yeah.
so helpful.
Mm.
I know you've touched on it. We touched on it at the beginning, but is there anything else you want to speak to as far as what you hope people will get out of reading this book, especially in the light of the world we're in right now?
Well, I was talking to a friend literally a couple of days ago who's also an artist, and I thought, artists are very important, and I'm not necessarily talking about myself. I just mean in general in
Yeah.
history. A
Yeah.
lot of what we know about history is like in behavior of people, in ancient times and so on. A lot of it comes from writings and scriptures and like things that people have written down that like depict behavior and the way people
Yeah.
thought or, at a certain period of time and country and so on. And I think, you know, one of the main character in the book, Elijah, is an artist, is a writer, and he battles with his own reality and how to turn that into fiction and write and I think that we all do, and I hope that even if you don't consider yourself an artist and you're more like a consumer of art, either way, I hope that it will, um, as it helps you to connect the dots and organize, your mind.
Yeah.
Throughout this time, I hope that it will encourage people to write. It would encourage people to create whatever piece, or to write in their diary, to write poems, to write their thoughts down in some form, even if they don't plan to publish it or to show anyone. But it, I think when you get your thoughts out of your head into some form, um, it can be very healing. And so I hope that it will encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
That's so, and Lord knows we have the time to write right now.
Yeah, we do, but with that said too, I understand because right now I'm working on that second installment of the Torn Skin universe. Like, I understand, like, some people are still working from home and so on, some are not, but I understand that in uncertain times like this, in times of struggle, it can be mentally draining. So then I
Yeah.
know that it's hard to get up in the morning sometimes and to be motivated. Some days I'm more motivated now. Some days I'm not so much. I'm like, I'm going to get all this done now that I have all this time. And then like I can't get anything done that day. And then some days I will get things done. And I think you also have to give time for yourself to deal with what's happening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening. So you have to deal with it. And some of us will know people who like are dealing with the virus, or some people will know people who know
Yeah.
people who dealt
Yeah. True.
with it and who like got better from it or like passed away from it. So there's a lot of stuff happening. So I get it that it's difficult, but at the same time, I do think that even if you can't reach, if you don't feel comfortable at any moment reaching out to anyone when you're struggling internally, um, sometimes you feel embarrassed or whatever, or you can always reach to yourself or to that pen and paper, I think, you can always put your thoughts down and then look back at your thoughts in some
Yeah.
way. And so I think there's always somebody, and whether you believe in God or you don't, or whatever your religion is, and no, some people might think there's a guide or so on. Everybody believes in different things, but I think that whatever is protecting you, is surrounded you, when you put your thoughts down, you're also clarifying for that protector that guide that you have, what's going on. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, we often portray God and everybody is all knowing, but I would imagine that they have a lot to deal with. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's like you're having a conversation with them, and if your mind is not, sometimes, if you're not being able to clarify what you want or what you need, what's going on, I think sometimes you'll get confused too. And so the more you can clarify it for yourself, then the more hopefully you'll get guidance and the help that you need. So even if you can't reach out to somebody, reach out to that pen and paper or something.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, it really does. I've been journaling. I stepped away from journaling for a little bit, and like
Mhm.
now I'm back, and it really is helpful and keeps me sane. But you mentioned the whole torn skin universe. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, so you can go on my website, which is andredinizartist.com, and if you go to /writing, the writing section that's where all of the information is. But basically, so the Torn Skin universe is comprised of two main components, which is the main cuts and the side cuts. So the main cuts are the main novels, are the novels that are the main framework where the main characters are in, the main plot lines, everything that's main
Yeah.
is in there. And then the side cuts are either minor plot lines, they're further explored in those books, or they are artistic works that the characters in the main books have created
Okay.
that I'm now creating for them. So for example, I mentioned that Elijah was a writer
Yeah.
in Ripped in Two, and in Ripped in Two you see poems that he wrote, you see a short story that he writes. It's literally in the novel, and he talks about his ideas and things he wants to write as a writer. He writes a couple of novels too in Ripped in Two. You don't see them, but he talks about it. And so um, there is a collection of short stories and poems that Elijah writes
Cool.
in Ripped in Two, and it's called Variations of Time and Nature. So then in October, that will be the first side cut. Variations of Time and Nature. It's a collection, it's an anthology of short stories and poems, and they're written by Elijah.
Oh, that's so
In Ripped
cool.
Two, yeah, and it will give you further um, insight into his psychology on events that happen in Ripped in Two. You see how he turns those events that happened in his life into
Yeah.
into a poem, into a short story. So if you've read Ripped in Two, you'll be able to get a lot more out of that. But we'll talk about. So that's what is the idea behind the.
Wow. Well, that's so fascinating. Because I feel like once we fall in love with a book, like nowadays, we really just want more. We want more and more and more and more. So,
And then I think it opens up for me to do something that I think is kind of, I hope, I mean, I just don't recall. To me, it's unprecedented, I have a character in a further book, because I'm also working on the second, actually, main installment that right now is titled The Shedding. But who knows if that will be the official title, but that's what it's called. And there's a character that shows up in that novel that is a painter.
ooh,
And there's a character too that she helps painters to succeed financially, and so those paintings, for example, would be something that I would like to release.
yeah,
Not,
definitely.
and so, there's many different things. I think at one point there is a musical that is talked about. And so it would be great to release that musical that is written to
Right.
character in that second book later down the road. So for me, I think the main cuts will be the novels. And then the side cuts will be all this further exploration of artistic works that these
Yeah.
characters have created in the main stories. And I think kind of,
Ooh,
I don't know, I've read books sometimes
fascinating.
where a character is a writer, or he's, or he or she is like is an artist in some way, and I've always been interested. Oh, what would that be like? Or if they
Yeah.
talk about doing a dance piece, what would that dance piece
Yeah.
look like? And I've always wanted to see it. And so, in books that I've read, so it was like, well, I'm gonna then
Let's do
this
it.
universe where you can see it.
Oh,
Hopefully, we'll be interested in looking at those too.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely feel like I need to reread your book since it's changed since I read it the first time. So tell me, how can I pre-order your book?
Well, right now, it's, kind of what I would call behind the scenes right now. It's being uploaded into Amazon, and with everything that's happening, it's just taking everything a little longer to occur, but it would be on Amazon. You can either download an ebook copy or you can purchase a paperback. And I always encourage paperbacks because I love paperbacks, but either way, you'll enjoy it. And it will be, the goal is that it will be available for pre-sale April 14th, and that it would actually be out April 21st. So yeah, that's the platform where you can get it.
Ooh, that's
Dude,
awesome.
it's so soon.
Then you're going to be you'll be an officially self-published author.
Yeah, it's the way to go now. Like you really just gotta get your work out there. There's really no excuse. I kept like, at one point you're like, wait, what is actually stopping me? Just like do it.
Exactly.
And the process can be daunting a little bit, but once you figure it out,
Yeah.
then you have figured it out, and then it just becomes easier after that. And so
Totally.
I can't wait for it to be out there too. And thank you. I do thank some people in the novel at the end of the novel who have read various drafts of this novel throughout the years, and you were definitely one of them. I totally
I
understand.
made the book. I made the book.
Yeah, if it wasn't for people who, I mean, my gosh, it's not like I was asking them to listen to my song or read my poem. I was actually someone, read an entire novel I wrote. So it's like, it's really, I felt still feel very thankful that people throughout the years were able to sit down, look through it, read it, and then sit with me and give me valuable feedback that I did take throughout the years to get to the final draft. And so thank you so much. And thank you for interviewing me now about
Yeah, well, thank you for writing it and sharing your art with the world. And yes, and I've had such a great time chatting with you more about it and hearing more about it, more than I even knew. I didn't know what I didn't know till now. So.
such a while. And I'll say there's also a couple of other interviews that are going to be coming too. One is with Phoebe Saracen, who's an amazing actress and writer as well here in Los Angeles, who's also an amazing improviser who I've met at the Groundlings. We'll talk about that too in the second interview. And then there's another interview too with Mecca Nizam. Mecca is an amazing artist, all around artist, but
Who I've actually seen.
yeah, she's a beautiful performer. She has amazing music, and she is in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to do an interview too
Oh, that's amazing.
about further aspects, and all the interviews will touch on different things about the work. And so I appreciate you being my first.
Yay! All right, well, I'll definitely watch the other interviews. Bye!
Yes, and thank you everyone for watching. If you have questions or comments, just put them down and watch Melinda's show. I'll have the link here too. Bye. Thank you.